Strap in, buckle up, and get ready to lay it on the line. This is Not Speeding, Just Qualifying, a podcast that's just as fast as it sounds. Hello, family. Welcome to an all-new episode of the Not Speeding, Just Qualifying podcast. I'm your host, David Lawrence. Thank you all so much for putting us in your ears today. As always, before we get into the meat and potatoes of this show, your friendly reminder to subscribe to us on YouTube. You can also go to YouTube Music, go to the podcast section. You will find us right there. Subscribe to us, like, and share. Make sure you don't miss anything whenever we drop something new on the channel. All right, guys, a little bit of a different episode today than what we're kind of used to. I usually have a pretty good topic, and I still do. But before this, I want to go through some news that we had over the course of this week. First, the Le Mans 24 Hours released their entry list. The Automobile Club de l'Ouest announcing the 62-car field for this June's 24-hour race. Stay tuned. I will have an episode that will go into the full 62 car lineup in more detail. It'll be a little bit towards the end of spring as we get closer to the race itself. But here's the main details you need to know for now. The 62 car lineup will be split between 21 hypercars, 24 LMGT3s, and 17 LMP2 machines. LMP2 is an invitational class for Le Mans only. And there is plenty of IMSA representation on this entry list. Granted, some of these do double with the World Endurance Championship, but they both compete in IMSA, so I'll throw a bone. In Hypercar, Porsche Penske Motorsport will have 3 entries, including a third one for their IMSA success. Heart of Racing, Aston Martin, Action Express Racing, which goes by Whelen Cadillac Racing, and Wayne Taylor Racing will be making their long-anticipated debut at the Le Mans 24 Hours after gaining an entry for the race. In LMP2, you will have teams such as United Autosport, Inter-Europol Competition, and AO Racing, which will be teaming up with TF Sport for their LMP2 entry. And in GT3, Heart of Racing, which already is in the World Endurance Championship, they will be joined by Corvette customers AWA Racing, which gained an entry through Ore Fidani, which was last year's Bob Aiken Award winner. Aiken Award winners and Jim Truman Award winners, which goes to the best amateur in LMP2, both gain invitations to the following year's Le Mans 24 Hours. So again, a lot of IMSA representation, which we love to see, and we didn't even scratch the surface on how many drivers will be coming over from the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. Again, we'll cover that in a more in-depth detail episode. Stay tuned for that one. That'll be coming a little later this spring. Moving over to NASCAR, Catherine Legg will be making her Cup debut this weekend in the Shriners Children's Hospital 500 at Phoenix. She will be in the number 78 Chevrolet for Live Fast Motorsports with sponsorship from business solution firm Droplight. This is a very significant entry. Catherine will be the first female to compete in the Cup Series since Danica Patrick in 2018. She will also become the first internationally born woman to compete in NASCAR since Christine Beckers and Layla Lombardi competed in the 1977 Firecracker 400. By the way, interesting little note, Layla Lombardi is also the only woman to score points in Formula One. Shout out to Seth Eggert of Athlon Sports for the international female driver trivia. And rounding out the news cycle, staying with NASCAR, it was announced on Thursday, none other than the one and only Morgan Freeman will serve as Grand Marshal for the Pennzoil 400 at Las Vegas Motor Speedway on March 16th. Boy, that's going to be a thrill, wouldn't you say? Well, guys, that completes a quick little rundown of the news from this week. Now let's go to our main topic. On our last episode, I did a quick recap of Daytona Supercross. Daytona Supercross was the kickoff to Daytona Bike Week. Daytona Bike Week is one of the biggest events on the motorcycle enthusiast calendar all season long. Additionally, it's a great opportunity for bikers up north to come down south and avoid those brutally cold winters. However, I want to talk about Daytona Bike Week's marquee event, the one event this week was built off of over 80 years ago. And that event is the Daytona 200. It's one of the oldest races in North America and probably one of the oldest races and most important races you probably have never heard of. Let's give you a history lesson of this race, shall I? For me to tell this story, I gotta go back to the beginning of the 20th century when Daytona Beach was the original home of the American land speed records. However, by the 1930s, the beach had lost favor with land speed record holders. In an effort to keep speed on the beach, a recent Daytona Beach transplant from Washington, D.C. by the name of Bill France Sr., yes, the founder of NASCAR, was looking to replace the land speed records on the beach course. After organizing a stock car race sanctioned by the American Automobile Association, better known as AAA, in 1936, he was looking to bring more to the beach. And to tell this part of the story, I need to go back a few years. Back in 1932, a 200-mile dirt track motorcycle race was organized and held down in Savannah, Georgia. The race alternated between Savannah and Jacksonville, Florida between 1932 and 1936. After the 1936 race in Savannah, the race caught the attention of France. He stepped in and arranged for the race to move to Daytona. On January 24, 1937, the inaugural Daytona 200 was run, sanctioned by the American Motorcyclists Association, and the rest is history, or so you think. For the first 20 plus years, the race was ran on the famed Beach Road course down in Daytona, the same beach course that would be later made famous through NASCAR running on the beach for about a decade, actually held motorcycle racing for a decade prior and a little bit longer after stock cars moved, but we'll talk about that in a second. The race wasn't held from 1942 to 46 due to World War II. And by 1960, the growth of Daytona Beach itself meant that the race on the beach was coming to an end. Fortunately, 4 years prior, Bill France began building his dream project, Daytona International Speedway, about 4 or 5 miles inland from the beach. As mentioned earlier, the bike stayed on the beach for both 1959 and 1960. But by 1961, because of the aforementioned development of Daytona Beach, the bikes were forced to move to Daytona International Speedway. Met with the traditional resistance of the move in the 60s, it was the 70s and the early 80s that ushered the race's golden era. The use of Grand Prix style bikes helped the race to gain international prominence. And the victory of the great Giacomo Agostini in 1974, for those who have not heard of Giacomo, he was the Richard Petty or Mario Andretti of motorcycle Grand Prix racing. And when he won the Daytona 200 in 1974, he did it in his prime while he was still winning world championships. It was Giacomo's victory that really increased the international prestige of the Daytona 200. The race was so successful that there were European imitations being spawned up in the late 70s and early 80s. However, one thing I haven't mentioned yet about this race was the huge impact safety had on it. And by impact, I mean it was a huge issue from the very beginning with its days on the beach. And moving to the speedway didn't remove the concerns. Rear tires blowing up was always a constant. Because of this, Grand Prix bikes were deemed too fast for the race and were subsequently outlawed by the mid-1980s. The international interest in the race started to decrease, and subsequently, the appeal the race once had also started to decline. The race did continue on with numerous bike class and organizer changes throughout the 90s, 2000s, and 2010s, which brings us to today. The race is now promoted by Moto America, which has promoted the race since 2022. Moto America promotes the highest levels of motorcycle circuit racing in the United States, which includes the top-tier AMA Superbike Championship. However, the Daytona 200 isn't ran with those bikes. No. The Daytona 200 is run by the third-tier middleweight Supersport category. Supersport is usually for amateurs and rising stars, but Moto America makes an exemption for the Daytona 200. It's a 9-points race where the pros, big stars, and the factory teams all are allowed to participate. 2025 will be the 83rd running of the Daytona 200, and here's a couple of nuggets for you. Scott Russell and Miguel Duhamel currently co-own the record for most wins with 5. Yamaha is the winningest manufacturer with 26. Out of the 36 riders looking to compete and win this year's Daytona 200, the favorite is Ducati factory rider Josh Herrin. Josh is a 3-time winner of the race, including the last 2 Daytona 200s in 23 and 24. Josh is looking to do the unthinkable. No rider has ever won the Daytona 200 3 straight years. Could history be made come Saturday? Only time will tell. Other riders of note to watch out for while they're competing in this year's race include former Daytona 200 winners Danny Eslick, who is a 4-time winner, and Brandon Pash, who is a 2-time winner. Both guys will be racing Triumph bikes in this year's race. And the Suzuki teammates Richie Escalante and Tyler Scott, who gave Herrin his biggest challenge in last year's race. Scott finished second to Herrin last year. Also of note, multi-time Isle of Man TT winners Peter Hickman and Michael Dunlop will be taking their talents to the Daytona high banks. Quick side note disclaimer, if you want to learn more about the Isle of Man TT, or if you're wondering what that is, stay tuned. I will be doing a more in-depth, detailed episode on the history of that race in the podcast later this spring. The Daytona 200 will take place at 1 p.m. on Saturday, March 8th. If you want to watch the race, there are 2 primary ways you can. You can watch the race on Moto America Plus, which is the series' live and on-demand streaming subscription service. Subscriptions range from a single race at $12.99 to monthly access at $39 all the way to $99 for full season service. If you don't want to spend the money, don't blame you, and you want to watch for free, it is available on Motorsport 1, the fast channel which is available over the air in the United States. If you want to find if Motorsport 1 is available in your area, log on to the channel's website, www.mtrspt1.com. Again, that's www.mtrspt1.com to find Motorsport 1's availability in your area. It's a fast channel that is available over the air in the United States, and if you are listening to me outside of these borders, they do say on the website they do have global availability. So check the website out for details in your area. Alright gang, that's a quick little history lesson to bring you up to speed and to make you aware of the Daytona 200 motorcycle race. If you feel so inclined, feel free to watch this weekend, or if you are in North Florida, Central Florida, there are still tickets available if you want to go to the race this weekend. Go to DaytonaInternationalSpeedway.com or MotoAmerica.com to purchase your tickets. Last but not least, the Daytona 200 is only one of several events on this weekend's motorsport calendar. Here's a look at what else is coming up. As we mentioned in the news section, NASCAR is in Phoenix. Cup, Xfinity, and ARCA West will be taking to the Diamond in the Desert. ARCA West on Friday, Xfinity on Saturday, Cup on Sunday. In Florida, the NHRA, the National Hot Rod Association, will be kicking off their 2025 season with the famed Gator Nationals in Gainesville. Over in Japan, the Super Formula Championship will be kicking off their season in Suzuka. And last but not least, the Race of Champions will be taking place at Stadium Australia in Sydney. one more quick disclaimer. I will be doing centric episodes on both the NHRA and Super Formula in the coming weeks. So if you like both series or want to find out more about both series, please stay tuned for the channel and be on the lookout for when those episodes drop. All right, family, we have reached the end of another episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. Before we depart today, make sure you follow us on our social medias. We are on X, IG, and Blue Sky at the handle NSJQ Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube and in the YouTube Music app in the podcast section. Also, when you subscribe, make sure you like and share our content with friends and family so that they can know, and hopefully the algorithm can actually pick this show up and recommend it to others. Just a thought, kids. Last but not least, if you want to follow me on my personal socials, I will put the handles to those in the description box to this episode. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the Not Speeding, Just Qualifying podcast. I'm David Lawrence. Enjoy the racing weekend, everybody. And until next time, you're not living life to the fullest until you're going flat out. So long, everyone.